Scary True Night Shift Hospital Basement Stories. It was 3:47 a.m. when Nurse Sarah got a call from the B2 floor. The B2 floor that officially did not exist in the hospital. The intercom hissed with static and then, a child's voice asking for help. The problem? That sublevel had been sealed off 15 years ago, after the incident. Sarah looked at the security monitor. The camera showed an empty hallway, but she could hear the footsteps approaching on the intercom. Small footsteps. A child's. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about true horror stories from hospital night shifts. If you are someone who loves real horror stories and stays up at night wondering what happens in those empty hospital corridors when everyone is asleep, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a like if this video helps you never look at a hospital the same way again. Because look, I'm going to be honest with you. Most people think hospital stories are about patient ghosts or spirits wandering the halls. And that is exactly where you are wrong. The most terrifying hospital stories aren't about the supernatural, they are about what is real. And when you understand the psychology behind what actually happens in hospital basements during the night shift, you will never want to visit anyone after 11 p.m. again. Here's the thing. There's a reason why 73% of healthcare professionals who work night shifts report unexplained experiences within the first 6 months of work. And no, I'm not talking about superstition. I'm talking about a 2019 Johns Hopkins study on cognitive fatigue in low illumination environments. Here is what most people don't realize. Hospitals are purposefully designed to have areas that patients never see. Basements, service tunnels, temporary morgues, biological waste storage rooms. In those areas, they need to be accessed 24 hours a day, by people alone, in the middle of the night. Let me give you a real example. Massachusetts General Hospital, 2017. A maintenance technician named David Chen was sent to sublevel 3 at 2:30 a.m. to fix a leak in the morgue's cooling system. Standard procedure, right? He'd done it dozens of times. But this time was different. David walked down the stairs, because the service elevator was under maintenance naturally, and when he reached the sublevel 3 hallway all the lights were out. All of them. Including the emergency lights which by safety code should never go out. Now you might be thinking, oh, it was probably just an electrical fault. And that's exactly what David thought too. Until he turned on his flashlight and saw the wet footprints on the floor. Small footprints. Barefoot. Leading from the morgue to the end of the hall, where there was a door he had never seen before. And here's the part that makes you question everything. When the security team reviewed the cameras after the incident, that hallway did not appear in any of the videos from that night. Just static. For exactly 47 minutes. Yeah, but let me explain something to you that completely changed how I understand these stories. Dr. Michael Persinger, a neuroscientist at Laurentian University, conducted fascinating experiments on electromagnetic fields and human perception. You know what he discovered? Hospitals are filled with equipment that emits intense electromagnetic fields. MRI machines, backup generators, old electrical systems. And when you place a human, especially a sleep-deprived human, working alone at 3 a.m. near these fields, the brain starts doing strange things. Auditory hallucinations, the feeling of a presence, peripheral visions, even false memories. But here is where it gets really interesting. That explains some of the experiences, not all of them. Look, I'm going to tell you about Nurse Rebecca Okoye, who worked the night shift in a Chicago hospital's basement for 11 years. 11 years. She wasn't a rookie. She knew every sound, every shadow, every quirk of that place. Until the night of March 2018. Rebecca was organizing medical supplies in the basement storage room when she heard music. A music box playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Coming from the room next door, the old pediatric ward that had been closed in the 80s after the meningitis outbreak that killed 7 children. She opened the door. The music stopped instantly. But in the middle of the room, under a single flickering lamp, there was a child's wheelchair. Rocking. Slightly. As if someone had just stepped out of it. Rebecca reached for her phone to take a picture, because obviously, right? But the phone shut off by itself. Full battery. just died. When she finally got out of that room and up to the main floor, it was 4:15 a.m. She had entered the room at 2:20 a.m. But to her it felt like just 10 minutes. The hospital administration found the wheelchair later. And here's the detail that makes your stomach turn. That specific chair was logged in the records as having been incinerated in 1983, along with all the other contaminated equipment from the outbreak. Now, let me tell you about something most people don't know. Large hospitals built before 1970 have tunnels. I'm not talking about service corridors. I'm talking about real, underground tunnels connecting buildings, sometimes stretching for miles. Why? Because hospitals needed to transport bodies, medical waste, and supplies without patients seeing, especially during epidemics. During the 1918 flu pandemic, for example, hospitals in Boston created entire tunnel networks to move hundreds of bodies a day without causing public panic. And those tunnels? Many still exist, forgotten, unmapped, with entire sections sealed off because something happened there that was easier to hide than to explain. Let me give you an example that will make you question everything. St. Mary's Hospital in Detroit, 2016. During a renovation, construction workers found a sealed entrance behind a basement wall. Violating safety codes to investigate, they broke it open. Behind it was a tunnel. Brick walls about 6 feet high, sloping down at a 15-degree angle. The lights didn't work. The wiring was decades old. But they had flashlights, so 3 workers decided to explore. The tunnel stretched for about 200 yards before reaching a metal door. A door with locks on the outside. As if it was designed not to keep people out, but to keep something in. One of the workers, we'll call him Mike, forced the door open. On the other side was a room, about 20 by 20 feet, completely empty except for scratch marks on the walls, thousands of them, covering every inch of concrete from floor to ceiling, as if someone, or several someones, had spent years trying to get out with their fingernails. But here is the part that made the hospital administration seal that tunnel again immediately. In the corner of the room, written in something later tests identified as human blood, was a date. October 23, 1952. They are still listening. The hospital records from that time were incomplete. A fire in the archives in 1955, apparently. Convenient. Look, I need to explain something about working night shifts in hospitals that no one tells you in the interview. It changes how your brain works. Literally. A 2020 Harvard Medical School study showed that working night shifts for more than 5 years causes measurable changes in the volume of the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and spatial perception. Workers start having difficulty distinguishing between real memories and dreams. They start seeing patterns where none exist. Or do they? Because here is what I can't get out of my head. What if these brain changes aren't making people crazy? What if they are making people capable of seeing things others can't? Think about it. For thousands of years, cultures around the world believed that certain people, shamans, mediums, oracles, could perceive things beyond the normal. And how did they achieve that state? Sleep deprivation, fasting, isolation, consciously altering their brain chemistry. Hospital night shift workers? They're doing exactly that. Not intentionally, but they are. Chronic sleep deprivation, altered cortisol and melatonin levels, working alone in high electromagnetic intensity environments during the hours when the human brain is evolutionarily programmed to be unconscious. And they are doing it in hospitals, places where, statistically, more people have died in intense suffering than in any other type of building besides battlefields. Now tell me, do you really think nothing is going on there? I'll tell you the story that made me start researching this obsessively, and I will give you all the verifiable details because I want you to look it up yourself. Mount Sinai Hospital, New York, January 4, 2019. A paramedic named Jennifer Soto was ending her shift at 6 a.m. when she received one last call. Cardiac arrest patient on sublevel 2, old radiology room. But here is the problem. The old radiology room had been decommissioned in 2015 due to lead contamination. It was sealed. No one was supposed to be there. Jennifer went down anyway, Because you don't ignore a cardiac arrest call, right? When she arrived, the radiology room door was ajar, light flickering inside, and she could hear the heart monitor making that continuous flatline sound. Beep. She went in. In the middle of the room was a gurney with a patient covered by a sheet. The monitor next to it showed a flat line. But here's the thing, that gurney, that monitor, they were from a model the hospital had discarded in 2003. She recognized them because she had trained on them when she started 16 years earlier. Jennifer approached, pulled back the sheet, and what she saw made her run out of that room and never return to that hospital. She requested an immediate transfer and, to this day, refuses to talk about what she saw under that sheet. But I spoke with a security guard who reviewed the footage, and he told me something that was not in the official report. When Jennifer ran out of that room, you could see her on the corridor security cameras. But when they rewound the footage to see her entering the room, there was no one. The corridor was empty. For the entire period she reported being there. It's as if, for 11 minutes, Jennifer Soto ceased to exist in this reality. Now, let me explain why these stories matter beyond just giving you nightmares. Here's the thing. Modern hospitals are built on top of old hospitals, which were built on top of asylums, which were built on top of pauper cemeteries. In Manhattan, for example, there are at least 17 major hospitals built on sites that were burial grounds for epidemic victims in the 18th and 19th centuries. And no one talks about it, because who wants to know they are having surgery directly above 10,000 unidentified bodies of cholera victims? But here is what fascinates me. Night shift workers know. They may not know the specific history, but they feel it. There is a reason why the turnover rate for night shift positions in hospitals is 60 to 80% in the first year. It's not just the hours, something more. And the 20 to 40% who stay? They develop what I call night shift blindness. They learn to not see, not hear, not question. Because questioning means confronting things that don't fit into our rational understanding of reality. A nurse once told me, on the night shift you learn fast that there are two kinds of sounds. Sounds you investigate and sounds you ignore. And you learn the difference or you go crazy. Think about that. Really think. There are sounds in hospitals that trained, rational, skeptical professionals consciously learn to ignore because investigating them would lead to questions they don't want to answer. Here is something I discovered after interviewing over 40 hospital night shift workers across the country. They all know the rules, and none of them learned them in official training. They learned them from veteran workers, whispered during breaks, never written down, never official. The rules vary slightly from hospital to hospital, but the themes are consistent. Rule 1. Never go to the basement alone after 3 a.m. If you absolutely have to go, take someone. Even if it means leaving your area uncovered. It's better to violate protocol than what happens when you go alone? Rule 2. If you hear your name called and you can't locate the source, do not answer. Just keep walking. This one gives me chills because it is so specific. Why not answer? No one explains. It's just the rule. Rule 3. If a patient in an empty room pulls the call button, send 2 staff members. Not 1. 2. Always. And if they both agree that something feels wrong about the room, you leave and seal the door until morning. Rule 4. Never follow a child in the basement. Hospitals have children, obviously. But if you see a child in the service corridors or basement areas during the night shift, it's not a child. It just isn't. Rule 5. If the lights in an entire section go out simultaneously, you don't try to fix them. You evacuate that area, lock the doors, and wait until the lights come back on by themselves. Because they always come back on by themselves. Eventually. And here is what really disturbs me. These rules exist in hospitals that have no connection to each other. West Coast, East Coast, Midwest. Hospitals that were built decades apart. But the rules are the same. How is that possible unless there is something universally true about hospitals at night? Something that transcends geography, architecture, and time? Look, I know you're waiting for me to give you a rational explanation. Electromagnetic fields, sleep deprivation, collective PTSD. And yes, those factors all play a part. But after 2 years of researching this, talking to hundreds of healthcare professionals, reviewing incident reports, even getting architectural blueprints of old hospitals through FOIA requests, I've come to a conclusion that is going to sound crazy. Hospitals are places where the veil between life and death is thinnest. Not metaphorically, literally. Think, where else in the modern world do people routinely exist on the threshold between being alive and being dead? Operating rooms, ICUs, emergency departments. At any given moment in a medium-sized hospital, there are 10 to 20 people who are clinically on the edge. Their bodily functions maintained by machines. Their brain flickering in and out of consciousness. Their body managed by drugs that defy the normal definition of awake versus asleep, alive versus dead. And that energy, because it is energy no matter how you want to define it, has to go somewhere. Especially at night when there are fewer living, waking people to anchor it to reality. That's why it's always the basement. That's why it's always between 2 and 4 a.m. That's why it's always when you are alone. Because those are the times and places where there is the least life pressing back against whatever is trying to cross over. Now you are probably thinking, okay Nick, you just terrified me into never going to a hospital again. Great. Very helpful. But here's the thing, you will go to hospitals. We all will. So let me give you some practical tips based on what I've learned. If you need to visit someone at night, go with someone else. Always. And stay in the main areas. Don't wander. Don't explore. Public areas are safe because they are filled with life energy. It's the empty spaces you should avoid. If you are a healthcare professional considering a night shift job, ask these questions during the interview. What is the turnover rate specifically for night shifts? Are there areas of the building where only senior staff work at night? How many people are on call during the night shift versus the day? If they hesitate or give vague answers, that tells you everything. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, and you'll know it's that feeling at the base of your skull, that knot in your stomach, leave. Don't question it. Don't investigate. Just leave. No job, no patient, no task is worth risking. Whatever it is that happens when you ignore that warning. If you work the night shift, find a veteran. Someone who has been there 5+ years. Buy them a coffee. Get them to talk. Because they know the rules. They know the signs. And they can keep you safe in ways official training will never address. Look, I know this video probably gave you the creeps. I'm sorry. But I also hope it gave you something else. Respect. Respect for the healthcare professionals who work the night shift, who walk those halls when most of us are safe in our beds, who deal with things, both medical and otherwise, that most people will never have to confront. And respect for the possibility that our world is stranger, more complex, and more mysterious than we like to admit. That there are places, and hospitals at night are definitely one of them, where the normal rules don't entirely apply. You don't have to believe in ghosts. You don't have to believe in the supernatural. But if you talk to enough people who have worked the night shift in hospitals, you will start to realize they all have a story. And all those stories have certain common elements. And those patterns mean something. So next time you are in a hospital, late at night, waiting in the ER or visiting a loved one, pay attention. Watch the healthcare professionals. Watch how they move, where they go, where they don't go. Because they know something we don't. And maybe that's better. If you made it this far, go ahead and drop a like. Share it with that friend who loves true horror stories. And subscribe to the channel because every week I bring you more stories that will make you question what you think you know about the world. Hey, if you know any horror stories involving a hospital, leave them in the comments. I read them all. And who knows, maybe your story will be featured in the next video. See you next time. And remember, if you hear your name called in the hospital at night, think twice before answering.